All right. We good now, all right?
All
Yeah.
right.
All right, very good. Okay, so I just want to know, first of all, your name is so unique. So you're gonna have to help me with that first of all. Marla,
Um,
can you use
yeah,
a middle name? Okay.
no.
No.
Marla
Okay.
Kenya is my whole first name. My father named me. It is very unique. It's something that had to grow on even myself. Um, his name is Kenneth, and my mother's name is Martha. So he took the MAR from her name and the KEN his
Oh,
name, and I don't know where he got the L and the Y from.
oh, awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I wanted you to come on and talk about being a first year teacher, and we won't talk about districts on this one because this is going into our SPED Speaks, which is our new podcast. And the
Okay.
podcast is just to give special education uh, personnel or staff or teachers or paras or parents, a community voice on just the experience of being a part of special education services. And
Hmm.
we also want to, really break that down, what that looks like, because so many people or parents get really, no, I don't want my
Yeah.
child in special education. And
Yeah.
you have to explain to them it's not a label,
Yes.
it's a
It's a
service that's
service.
provided.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so the idea is to bring on persons that are providing services, how you provide services,
Yes.
um, why you provide the services that you do. And like you stated, there's some unique things about you and what you do and the type of service that you
Yes.
provide, just like the uniqueness about the service I provide. So with
Yes.
that said, it's Marla Kenya, whole first name, last name is, are we pronouncing it Dunham or
Yes.
Dunham?
It's Dunham.
Dunham. We got
Yes,
that right.
ma'am.
So now I understand that you're not necessarily, how long have you been in the education arena and how long have you provided this type of service?
So, okay. I started my journey as in college as an elementary education major.
Mm.
And I got down to one of my service learning projects and was like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Um, I love all kids. I'm like, but these young ones, I don't know if this is for
Yeah.
me. And this was originally I'm from Indiana, so this was in Indiana. But I've always worked with children on some type of level, from church to babysitting in my outside life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it wasn't so I changed my major and I didn't go through with that. So it wasn't until I can't remember how old I was. My aunt started a not-for-profit organization called Parent Information Distribution Center, and she was
Mm.
an advocate for parents. Her own child, I had a cousin that was diagnosed with ADHD, and she was getting so much pushback in the system and dealing with teachers on his education and them not wanting to pretty much accommodate
Mm.
his
Mm-hmm.
learning style. And she went and spent countless hours in the library and just learning all that she could
Mm-hmm.
about ADHD and about services that were to be provided in the schools. I find that a lot of parents don't know sometimes what is
Mm-hmm.
offered and what is, there for them and their children as a free, appropriate public education is concerned.
Mm-hmm. Use those
They
terms.
they, they just some just fall by the wayside, and it's so sad. And so that's when I first became aware of, special education and things like that, and
Mm-hmm.
became interested in it. Before I moved to Texas, I was a para, and what I did, I worked with the Title I students. So it was the students that they weren't at the bottom, but like in the middle needed extra help with math and reading. And I provided those supports. I would come and do pullouts with students and read or work on letter sounds, depending on the grade level. It was when I moved to Texas. I had been trying, so I got my degree, but I got it in general studies in Indiana. And so when I got to Texas, in Indiana, I had been trying to get my teacher's license, and to no avail, could never get the information that I needed on what I needed to do. But I liked God always has a purpose.
Mm.
I got to Texas and um, met with someone in HR and for a district, and he was like, "You have a degree. Why don't you do a ACP?" I'm like, "What's that?" Because I had never heard of an alternative certification program. I
Okay.
said, "What is that?" I'm like, everyone that I had spoken to in Indiana wanted me to keep going back to school and do my license that way. I'm like, well, I don't want to obtain another bachelor's degree. You know, if I
Right.
do anything, I'll work towards my master's, not another bachelor's. Um, and like I said, so I got here. This man
Mm-hmm.
opened his drawer and pulled out several cards to different alternative certification programs and was like, pick one. He was like, your mind and how everything about you, like, you need to be a teacher and we need teachers. Like, you don't need to just be a
Uh,
parent. Because I was applying for a parent position. He was like, you don't just need to be a parent, you need to be in the classroom. And I'm like,
okay.
okay. So and now here I am. I've been teaching 4 years as a special education teacher. I've been in class support or a co-teacher, and then now I work on a. For the past 3 years, I've done behavior, and
Mm.
I love my behavior babies
Mm-hmm.
because everyone. Oh, I wouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people look at them as, lost causes or different things like that. And I tell people it's about building relationships. And I feel like that with any student, it's about building relationships. But
Mm-hmm.
really, excuse me, those behavior students, it's about building relationships and also knowing that every day is a new day. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't have that mentality, but every day is a new day. I don't let what the things these kids do and say one day affect the next day. Because
Very good.
one, I know you not upset with me, especially early in the morning. You got kids that will cuss you out first thing in the morning. I know
Mm.
that's not for me because it's first thing in the morning. I have done nothing but just seen you and said good morning. So I know you're
So
not, I know
you
it's
learn
something
to
else.
separate the emotion
Yes.
from the personal and
Yes.
not let it affect your person.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
is a very powerful statement because it's very
Yes.
important to understand that they're there because of the emotion and the emotion will
Exactly.
come out in the behavior. Right.
Exactly.
So
And
we
so,
always say we're going to look beyond the behavior
yes.
to try to address the emotion and where that emotion and that passion and that
Yes.
anger, whatever label we want to put on it, where is it coming from? Very
Yes.
good.
And what
Well,
can we do with it?
yeah,
How
what can
can
we, how
we
can we challenge it?
how
How
can
can
we
we challenge
challenge
it?
this and what
How
can
can we
we do?
divert that till another day? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Very good, very good. So this year, one thing we've been really talking about as a group is our lesson development, and we recognize that in our lesson development is driven by the IEP.
Mhm.
And there are times when we are presented with certain modules or certain presentations that we're required to cover. However, for a teacher in special education, providing special education services where that IEP is driving us, sometimes this becomes a challenge when we're trying to meet a structure or framework. And then we've got IEPs over here. But the expectations for us to present a certain way, sometimes it conflicts with the way we must do it from an individual standpoint. So I wanted you to share being in your unique situation, which I had never heard before, where you just did when you could talk about that. But based on what you told me, I'm excited to find out about how this uniqueness is happening, meeting the guidelines and requirement, of course, and how you develop and prepare for your lesson. So first start off, but just before you get into the lesson part of it, share with the unique opportunity you have this year in what you do.
So, being in behavior, the class that I teach and the students that I work with are students that who have gone through the whole gamut of different behavior strategies that did not work. So they needed this tier 3 inclusion situation, and so that's what the behavior support class is, and it looks very different elementary, middle schools, and high schools. So elementary and middle school students typically stay in the BSC all day, so they do get that instruction in those lesson plans from that teacher who supports students who receive special education services. However, high school looks a little different. I
Your
don't
particular
know.
high school.
Yes, my particular high school. I can't speak for
Would
others.
you say that in high school across the spectrum or across the districts or whatever, that this is a norm to just have
For
your type of class, or typically in a high school it mirrors the elementary and middle school programs of
so
service,
for me,
in your
and
experience.
my experience, this is what it looks like unless it's an adaptive behavior program. If it's
Okay.
AB, then yes, they in high school, they're there in that class all day and receive instruction from that teacher. But in my
More
experience,
a more restrictive environment.
yes, ma'am. But in my experience for what I do, and I've also worked in another program called PASS, which was a positive approach to student success. My students went out. I only saw them the first thing in the morning. And so the reason for that is having them first period is pretty much a temperature check. You're the first that they interact with. You see how they're doing. Now, if I need to hold students, which I will do from time to time, if I see that that morning is not working for you, I'm going to hold you for as long as I need to before I send you out there to interact and go into this general population and otherwise either
The
cause a
past program
problem or get in
least,
trouble or
least
something like that.
restrictive environment.
Yes.
Very good.
And so what I teach is social skills. So for a lot of my students, that's something that they lack in that executive functioning piece. And in order, they lack they have the inability to control their emotions.
Okay, so let me get this straight. We've gone from some of these kids to a middle school and elementary, from a more restrictive environment to a maybe a past program where they've been given the leadway to be in a less restrictive, and we find it through the tier of intervention that wasn't working, that they needed that piece, needed more time to address and really learn how to deal with the social, because in the past maybe there may be that social piece, but then a more restricted environment where it's more controlled or whatever, and they're not really implementing it in the general population just in that one environment, which is what they need to be able to do, right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so
Yes.
where you, from your standpoint, you guys are like, hey, we're not going to be more restrictive, but we are going to take the opportunity to teach the school skills and allow you to go out there and practice those skills.
Those skills. Yes, ma'am. That's exactly it right there to perfection, is taking what you learn in here out there and actually doing it. And that's something that I love to do. And it gives the opportunity. It's a lot of collaboration and working with different teachers, because I have to speak to all the teachers that my students have, and address them and kind of teach them and give them skills to work. So I have
That's
a
a good
unique
piece.
I have a unique position because I don't just work with the students. I have to work with the teachers as well. And so
So
I
how
have
many
to,
students do you have this year?
oh Lord, on my caseload right now, oh, and I was just looking at it because I was doing progress reports. I think 12.
Oh, okay,
I
12,
think
okay.
12. I had some student, they, even though
Come
you're
and go.
trying to teach them, they go in and out, the
Yes, okay. So
DEAP and things.
you have
So
12 on your caseload. So are you the only teacher providing this particular service, program of
yes,
service?
and I have an assistant.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So what does that typically look like in your class? Let's talk a little bit of how you plan for these services and based on their IEPs. We know you can't be specific about the
Hold on,
student's
they doing
IEP out
announcements.
of confidentiality, but if you could just share how you typically plan a lesson for this program of service.
Hold on 1 second, they doing announcements.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't hear them. Oh, now I do. Oh, you muted. Okay, great. I
Okay,
appreciate
no
Okay.
problem. I thought they really had some announcements today, but no, they just did the pledge and stuff. So what I like to do first, is I get all my paperwork and I go through it. I'm not someone I believe heavily on. I review the paperwork, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the first thing when I see a child. So I want to know what's in here.
We're talking about the data from the previous
Yes,
years of the IEP.
yes.
Tell me which data you're specifically referring to.
So before anything, I'm gonna look at this FIE.
Mm-hmm.
Before anything, what's this background? What's the history? What's the family
That
life? I want to
FIE
know that.
stands for, the FIE stands for,
Oh Lord, FIE stands for the full individual evaluation.
thank you so much. I didn't mean to put on spot, but others may look at this and when they look, they want like,
Yeah, and be
what?
like, what's that? Yeah. I try not to do that. I try to use layman's terms, but sometimes.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We have many acronyms in the service of
Yes, we do.
special education in the K through 12 environment, but we want to make sure that with this is a teaching tool, SPED
Yes,
speaks teaching tool, so we want to make sure that we address it. Okay, go on.
yes.
I'm sorry.
So and then I look at testing to see where they fall intellectually. What's their strengths and weaknesses? What have other teachers had to say about this student? And then what else do I look at on that IEP?
Maybe a functional behavior, an FBA.
Oh yes, if they have an FBA, if they have a behavior intervention plan, I'll look at those to see what are target behaviors, what were things that they were looking at or working on previously. How did we get here? Type of
Mm-hmm.
situation to this most restrictive environment. How did we get here? What happened? And sometimes, to be honest, um, sometimes it really depends on the district.
Mm-hmm.
I've had students come in that were transfer students, and I get the IEP and the behavior intervention plan, and I'm like, what did we do before here? We just threw this child in a alternative placement. Why? I'm not understanding why. It's like sometimes there is no a why. There's no linkage
Mm-hmm.
in the why. There's no linkage that anything happened previously that they got the supports that they need. And that's one of those things where I say sometimes parents don't understand. situations and know what questions to ask and why we're doing this and what
Mhm.
have we previously done. And I feel like that's something that we can work on.
Right, right.
Um,
So
because
let's say at this point you do have all the data that you need
yes,
to be able to plan.
yes.
After you got your data, what happens next?
So once I have my data, first day I'm going in and I'm actually getting to know. Like literally the first 2 weeks, kinda, of my class is really getting to know my students. I have them fill out student information forms. I want to know, I want to know what's your favorite color. They know birthdays are important to me because I love
Mhm.
birthdays. So I want to know your birthday. What's your favorite subject? What's your least favorite subject? I get a chance to see where their head is.
Right.
And then that leads me knowing what I know.
My light is on the
Oh,
time.
knowing what I know,
Around.
it'll go off mine, do the same thing. Knowing what I know from paperwork, I have that. Then once in that 2 weeks, I know what I know from the student and I have that piece. That generates now my lesson plan as far as what skills do we need to work on?
Mm.
And then I can accurately plan my lessons. And so sometimes for different years, it has changed, from the beginning what I work on. Because if I have students that are more aggressive,
Mm.
then that I start there.
Mm. So you
If I
start
have,
where they are.
well, yes, ma'am, I start where they are. So, for instance, this year I don't have any aggressive students. So I haven't really even dealt with the physical aspect because I don't have students that like to fight and things like that. Now in my past, I have had students that like that's their thing. You look at me wrong and I'm swinging. So it's starting there, knowing what I'm dealing with, and then starting there, knowing their deficits, and I'll do presentations, and if I need to change my words or different things like that, I'll give vocabulary. And I like for my students, um, for their work to be student centered. So sometimes they lead. I'll have
Mm-hmm.
them do presentations about a social skill or a coping skill. I'll do a lesson about coping skills. We'll do coping strategies, something that also in my lesson plan, something that we start with every day. And this has been in all my classes. Daily affirmation. I'm strong. I believe strongly on what you say changes your mindset. And so every day we start with a daily affirmation. And
Awesome.
sometimes I let the kids, give me something, or myself or my assistant will do it. And I do the I say, you say, we say. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, I'll say it, for some of my students that may struggle with reading. I say it first. So that helps when it's not bringing attention to them because other people don't know that, but I know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I say it first and then, say it, they say it, and we can say it, kind of say it together if they still didn't get it. Um, I do restorative circles,
Mm-hmm.
and I usually do those. And I guess you can't say restorative because it's like not that we have had some type of issue, but I do circle time usually on Mondays when we come back from a break for sure, and sometimes on Fridays. But again, that's just that check in to see how we're
Mm-hmm.
doing, what's going on, how was the weekend. Um, does anybody need to talk about something possibly after class, or is it something you feel comfortable sharing here? Um,
How long typically are your classes?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. And so within that 45 minutes, you have targeted that skill set. You've identified their IEPs. You've identified their backgrounds, and you know your students. You know you've got inventory of their likes, their dislikes. And then there's some things that you do that are collective, that are for the social environment. And
Yes.
then I'm sure there are things that you do. I'm hearing accommodations for their reading levels. How do you address the individual students within that 45 minutes?
Um,
Are you grouping the lessons based on how many students do you have? All 12 at one time, or just
no.
12 throughout the day?
So those are my 12 total that I case manage. In my class, that have my class, I think it might be half of them.
About
Might be
6.
6 that actually have my class.
Nice.
So different, again, I'm trying to think of the students in there. They kind of differ. So some of my students like writing, some like projects. So with everything that I do, I give that option of doing it how you prefer to do it. I
Okay, so we have
always keep that.
appreciation.
Yes. I always keep that available to them. How would you like to do it? I have some students that, to prefer to kind of how we're doing, sit and talk to me and explain what they, and it comes out better for them than trying to write it or different things like that. Because for me, it's not an academic course. So I try to be as generous as possible with them.
Accommodating, of course.
Accommodating with them so that they're getting the full understanding of the skill that I'm trying to teach, and not the brunt of, oh, you misspelled this word.
Performance. So it's not a performance based, but it's a skill based. It's a social skills based that they're mastering.
Yes.
They may have to practice it in multiple ways, multiple modalities, like you indicated, maybe from a written standpoint to respond and address, or maybe from acting out or having just a conversation to address. It just depends. That sounds so interesting. You guys have a lot of fun, I'm sure.
When the kids participate, especially high school, oh my God, I have to find things that is like really gonna keep them motivated and keep them going. Next year, and then when you're new somewhere, it's like, okay, I don't know if I can do this, because I'm a push the envelope kind of person. I like to do different things. I want them to work together, because some of my kids, though they are have a label of emotional disturbance, they're not like all out of control. They're reserved and don't want to work with others. So we do group work. I do group work to challenge that and have them open up. So hold on one second.
What about, were you able to tie in the recent altercation between Chris Rock and Will Smith as a teaching tool for social, or I could see
I have
turning
not touched
into it.
that.
Okay.
I have not touched that. I have not. And I don't know when I will, because I have my own I have my own personal things with that. So it's something that we might touch on. I haven't heard too many of my particular students talking about it. I heard other students talking about it. So I don't know if my students are aware of it, because usually they will ask questions about stuff happening. Miss, did you see this? Nobody haven't said anything, so I don't know if they even really pay
So
attention
you
to.
kind of let them drive, from the community or environment, just what's going on, in their world and what they're exposed to as a as a tool. I just thought maybe that was something that everybody was aware of, but I understand what you're saying, but
Yeah.
it's more authentic
Mm-hmm.
when they bring it up. And I knew that was something that there's so much discussion about.
Yes, yes,
So,
because I had a lot.
so yeah.
But yeah, so and it also so it's very authentic, and then it's also authentic to what's happening around the school with them or in classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I will take that information, and when I bring it to class, I don't say the student's name or this happened with such and such. It's just something that we work on, that we put into
Yeah.
practice. Now, what I do like to do though with my students, if something happens in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I wait till my student is calm. We have a conversation about it. My student has to tell me what they could have done differently and how they could have done it differently. And then I like to have, if it was a conflict with another teacher, when they're calm and ready, they know, okay, we're going to have a conference. We're going to talk, and what can we do um, so that this won't happen again.
Great. Well, I'm going to end our interview at this point. I've heard so many wonderful things. I'm sure we'll have you share again with another topic,
Yes.
if you're willing. And so we
Yes.
just appreciate you talking to
Thank
us and
you.
expressing what's going on with you. And we just want to share and show that in under the umbrella of special education arena, we're talking about education for students in K through 12, pre-K through 12. We're
Mm-hmm.
talking about special education services that we provide in the under the education umbrella. And
Mm-hmm.
so we thank you so much because
Thank
this is
you.
Fed Speaks. So thank you
I
so much,
appreciate it.
Dunham. And again, that name is Marla Kenya Dunham, who
Yes.
is teaching a social skills development class for students who have demonstrated behavior and have behavior challenges. And so we're meeting those needs, individual needs, through a social skills class, which is a 45-minute class for these high school students, which is great for them because
Yes.
they need application, they need that authentic skills to develop to prepare them for this world 21st century. So thank
Yes.
you again so much.
Thank
We appreciate you.
you.
You have a wonderful day.
You too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.